Arthur Vance, a man whose retired life was meant to revolve around golf and literature, lived in Serenity Shores, an upscale community under the thumb of its Homeowners Association. Arthur was a former managing partner at Price Waterhouse, a CPA with a meticulous mind who saw the world as a giant, solvable ledger. His peaceful retirement was violently interrupted when the new HOA President, Chad Albright, delivered his first official mandate, a sudden non-negotiable 40% spike in monthly dues. The justification for the budget bomb, delivered during a thinly attended midweek meeting, was laughably vague: critical infrastructure costs and long-term capital improvements. Chad stood at the mahogany podium, basking in the clubhouse chandelier, radiating synthetic confidence. The community had been quietly simmering under his bureaucratic micromanagement, but this hike was the flashpoint. When the shouting subsided, Arthur, sitting composedly in the back row, raised his hand with the cool analytical authority of a finance professional. "Mr. Albright," Arthur stated, his voice cutting cleanly through the residual murmurs. "As a CPA and a paying resident, I request immediate access to a comprehensive financial breakdown. Specifically, I require the current year's budget versus actuals, the last 5 years of capital expenditure, reports with corresponding project completion certificates, and copies of all vendor contracts exceeding $50,000. I expect the documents within 7 business days, as stipulated by our bylaws." Chad's plastic smile evaporated, replaced by a patronizing sneer. "Ah, Mr. Vance, always thorough. Let me be clear. These records are complex, governed by strict corporate privacy stipulations, and frankly, not suitable for public distribution. You wouldn't understand the complex fund allocation models. But rest assured, the board has reviewed them, and they are completely confidential." He delivered the last word like a gavel blow, expecting the matter to be closed. That was the fatal mistake. Chad's sheer arrogance met Arthur's professional certainty. Arthur knew that state law governing non-profit residential associations, like the Serenity Shores HOA, mandated full financial transparency. The records weren't confidential. Chad was simply trying to strong-arm the community. Arthur wasn't interested in a legal battle over document access. He didn't want the documents handed over. He wanted the board to deny them, because that denial was the key to unlocking a far more powerful weapon. He wanted something definitive, something that would dismantle the board entirely, using their own budget against them. That night, the silence of Arthur's study was broken only by the turning of pages. He didn't call his lawyer. He called on the silent, infallible power of state statute. He dusted off his old state corporate governance guide, focusing on Title 18, Chapter 3, and found the perfect, obscure provision, Section the 18th of March 912. Detailing the process for compelled financial examination. This law was a nuclear option, a legislative tripwire designed for moments exactly like this. It forced the HOA to hire an external forensic auditor, at the HOA's expense. Triggered only by a formal, documented denial of records, backed by a petition from a specific percentage of homeowners. Arthur didn't just need the documents, he needed the board to pay for the ultimate in accounting scrutiny. An audit designed not to certify books, but to find hidden crime. For the next 2 weeks, Arthur lived a double life. By day, he played the retired gentleman. By late afternoon, he transformed into a methodical operative. He needed 53 notarized signatures, 10% of the 528 voting units. They had to be flawless, immune to legal challenge. He traded his comfortable retirement wardrobe for khakis and a polo shirt, and his 9-iron for a crisp clipboard. The signature campaign was a war of attrition against apathy and fear. Mrs. Delgado, Arthur's neighbor, signed immediately, whispering, "They made me replace my mailbox last year because the paint was a shade off-white. They deserve this." But resistance was everywhere. Mr. Henderson, the self-appointed community pragmatist, was deeply skeptical. "It's just pavement, Arthur. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. This will cost us legal fees." Arthur looked him straight in the eye, his voice low and firm. "Mr. Henderson, when the molehill costs 40% more than last year, and the financial statements are locked away because they're too complex. It stops being a molehill and starts becoming a liability that we, the shareholders, must neutralize. I assure you, the cost of this audit, which they must pay for, will be far less than the cost of their continued theft. Henderson. Finally convinced by the icy logic, signed, Arthur mapped his routes like a supply chain manager. Working from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., he faced slammed doors, suspicious glances, and one direct confrontation when the HOA manager's car idled suspiciously at the end of his street, clearly monitoring his movements. The pressure was mounting. He knew Chad would start working to discredit him publicly. On the 14th evening, standing on the porch of the community's oldest resident, Ms. Vivian Sterling, Arthur finally secured the 53rd, legally impeccable name. He felt a focused, controlled thrill. The petition was locked down. The next morning, Arthur marched into the HOA office. He didn't see Chad. He handed the stack of notarized documents, bound in a clean linen finish report cover, to the trembling office manager. Brenda. Attached was a formal letter citing the statute and demanding the selection of the independent auditor within 5 business days. The professionalism of the package spoke volumes. This wasn't an angry resident, it was a legal instrument. 3 days later, the board realized they were cornered. Their lawyer confirmed the statute's validity. They were compelled to comply and pay the expense. The sheer weight of the audit's potential cost frightened them, but the fear of what was buried in their books was paralyzing. In a desperate final attempt to control the outcome, Chad approved the hiring of Blackwell & Chen, a firm he believed would be slow, expensive, and easily manageable. Chad had no idea that Blackwell & Chen was a niche, boutique forensic firm Arthur knew well from his days at the Big Four. Arthur had subtly fed the name through an old, trusted contact. Ms. Chen, the lead partner, specialized in non-profit and governmental fraud and possessed a reputation for surgical precision. She was not a mediator. She was a financial assassin. When Ms. Chen arrived, a sharp, efficient woman in a tailored dark suit, Arthur arranged a quiet, off-the-record meeting at a discreet cafe 20 miles away from Serenity Shores. He didn't hand her speculation. He handed her 3 meticulously organized binders, labeled A, B, and C. This is not hearsay, Ms. Chen, Arthur explained, sliding the binders across the table. This is a roadmap. Binder A. Contracts awarded without public bids focus on evergreen landscaping. The owner, I suspect, is the former treasurer's nephew. Note the 400% markup on common materials. Binder B. The Community Wellness Center line item. 7-figure annual entry. It exists only as an expense, never as an asset, and the funds vanish into an account-coded land acquisition holdings. Binder C. Discrepancies in the capital reserve usage dating back 10 years. Look specifically for money that moves out of the reserve and then immediately into an account. Coded as a legal settlement, they were not settling lawsuits, Ms. Chen. They were moving money. The audit took 3 months. They were 3 months of silent, cold tension in Serenity Shores. The board members, now paranoid and jumpy, tried to bury Ms. Chen in irrelevant data, citing security concerns and complex file storage systems. But Ms. Chen was immovable, requesting only what was legally mandated. Backed by the authority of the law, Chad had mocked. Arthur maintained a daily vigil, receiving encrypted, cryptic status updates from Ms. Chen's junior analyst. He found himself sleeping less, but living more. The thrill of the hunt, the promise of justice, was a potent drug. Then came the final report. The presentation was held at an emergency community meeting that packed the clubhouse beyond capacity. The air was thick with anticipation, fear, and the scent of brewing coffee. Chad Albright, visibly sweating, sat at the head table with the other board members, their forced smiles long gone. They looked like defendants awaiting a verdict. Ms. Chen took the floor, bypassing the board's rambling introduction. Her presentation was delivered without emotion, focusing only on the numbers and the supporting documents projected onto the screen. She didn't use the word fraud, opting instead for professional terms that carried devastating weight: systemic financial mismanagement, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional misallocation of capital reserves. She highlighted the evergreen landscaping contract, showing the 400% markup and the immediate wire transfer to the nephew's private holding company. Then she moved to the centerpiece of the theft, the $4.2 million pool fund. She displayed a complex flowchart detailing how funds, ostensibly for a Phase 2 pool and recreation area, were systematically diverted through 3 different shell companies, one registered in Delaware, one in Nevis, and a final account that funneled the money directly into the personal investment portfolio of the board's previous treasurer, who was sitting 3 feet from Chad. The funds were being used to purchase cheap, remote real estate, low-risk private equity venture disguised as a communal amenity. The collective gasp from the room was immediate and prolonged. Arthur, watching from the back, allowed himself a small internal nod. Chad attempted to interrupt, sputtering about misinterpretation and incomplete data, but Ms. Chen silenced him with a cold stare, and merely pointed to the final page of her report. The total confirmed misallocated funds over the 10-year period is $5.8 million, she announced plainly. Furthermore, because the board formally denied the initial access request, they triggered Section 183912, making the Homeowners Association responsible for the full 6-figure cost of this forensic audit. I recommend immediate legal action to recover these funds and pursue personal liability against the individuals named. Within the hour, the vote of no confidence was unanimous and swift. The entire board, including the smug Chad Albright, was immediately stripped of their powers. They were facing not only extensive civil suits to recover the $5.8 million plus the cost of the forensic audit Arthur had forced them to fund, but also the very real prospect of criminal charges. The 40% dues increase was immediately rescinded, and a provisional committee was established, with Arthur Vance volunteering to act as an unpaid advisor. The quiet neighborhood of Serenity Shores finally had a clean slate, one not through shouting, but through the patient, deadly accuracy of a retired CPA who knew exactly where to look and how to spring the perfect trap.